What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday night. Welcome into the program. Thank you for joining us a little bit early than usual at 7 o'clock. We are so excited for the show that we have for you tonight. Ryan Talbot is my co-host. I am Matt Perino. This is Shout Buffalo Football Podcast, brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets, your neighborhood store with more. We are joined first by, he needs no introduction, but Mr. Steve Tasker, Wall of Famer, current color commentator for game broadcasts on the radio, One Bills Live host. I mean, is there anything that you don't do?
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, we're glad. We appreciate it as well. You taking some time out with the family tonight. We're interrupting a little bit, but we appreciate you joining us. Now, we've been talking about reaching out to you for a couple weeks, and then Saturday into Sunday happened, and I was like, we have to get Steve Tasker on the show this week. And I heard a little bit of the show today on One Bills Live. You talking to Bill Fichtner about this hype video that is just taken over Bills Mafia this week. I mean, it's been awesome. I grew up a Bills fan, obviously. The fan part of me more back in the 90s, but I feel like what you did in that video, it was awesome. A little background for me before I get your reaction to it. I worked at the UFC for 5 years, and in the fight business, every event is kind of positioned around one big hype video that, the commercial or whatever goes out. And so I've seen millions of these over the years. I mean, right. Millions. And this one was one of the coolest. What's this week been like for you?
Well, it's been fun. The part about it that's fun is watching everybody's reaction. I mean, that's the part of it that's the best. I mean, certainly, I mean, you're kind of shooting it. I mean, I've shot a bunch of car commercials in my day. I've done a lot of TV work. So it was kind of another day, but you kind of knew that you hope that this video that they put together would strike a chord with fans, and to see the fun part for all of us is to see the reaction to it. And it's been awesome. I don't know. I saw today there's something like 1.4 million views of the darn thing. So it's pretty cool to see. And the fun, but no question that the fun part of it is seeing how Bills fans react to the hype video. And it's pretty rewarding.
And it's not just the hype video now. The fans were demanding T-shirts. So now if you go to the One Buffalo shop, they have different style T-shirts. What did you think of the T-shirt design that fans can now get their hands on?
It's great. Hey, it's great. I was all for it. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun doing that and being a part of it, having, just the T-shirts are awesome. It's funny too, because, I'm on the Bills payroll. I mean, it's no secret. And so I'm not, it's a Bills thing. Hopefully it's a big revenue stream for them, but I don't make any money off it. But the funny part of it is it's going to cost me money because everybody I know thinks I can get them one, right? So now I'm shelling out all this money for all these T-shirts for all my friends and my family, and I feel obligated to get it for them, right? So it's an absolute blast. I couldn't be more happy with the video, and like I said, the fan reaction has been the best part.
Did you a fan of the Godfather movies at all?
Oh yeah.
There's a lot. I've seen a lot of memes and a lot of fan reactions that Steve Tasker could star in the next Godfather. The way that you ended that video.
Yeah, we had the Buffalo guy Bill Fichtner on the show today, and he said it was somewhere between the Godfather and North Tonawanda. So somewhere we fall right in that wheelhouse. So it's pretty funny line by him, and it was. It's one of those videos, and I've had my friends. You get 1.4 million views, and it's probably only about 20,000 of us that have seen it, and we all watch it over and over again, right? So that's the reality of it. But it has been a lot of fun, and you're right. It's been. I was a little shocked by that. I didn't. Whatever role I was playing, I felt like I was playing myself. So it was pretty natural.
Very cool. Yeah, I was coming after the game. It's always a furious race. I mean, we're writing stories, we're getting on the press conferences with the players, but I had seen somebody share it, and I was able to find a few minutes to read it or to watch it, and I was blown away. It was a great job. Let me ask you this, though, transition a little bit to your role this season, because it's been a little bit different. Going into this year, you didn't anticipate to be in the booth and calling the games with Murph, but obviously because of COVID, you've stepped in and obviously done a great job with my guy Sal Capaccio down there on the sidelines. What's that been like, kind of wearing all of these hats this year?
It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed doing the games with Murph. Murph and I have been friends for 3 decades, and being in the booth with him, we're in the same booth every game, whether it's home or away. And the routine has been great. Murph has been great. Eric Wood, because of the logistics of COVID, couldn't continue doing it. And so they asked me to do it. I said, I'll do it for as long as you need me. But, I still consider it Eric's job. And it's, obviously we thought the team would be good. But this good was a pleasant surprise for all of us, and the way they've won, and the way Josh Allen has played, the way the offense has looked, and as successful as they've been, it's been a gift. And so it's a little bit of serendipity with all the things that have come together, and me doing the radio show every week, every day of the week. Has been an added bonus for the broadcast and for all the things that go into it. So it's a lot of things have come together, not just the football team.
You mentioned Josh Allen. You've shot commercials with the man. You know him pretty well. Was there a certain point, whether it was on the field or just getting to know the guy, that you said, okay, there might be something special about this guy?
Well, certainly he was a great guy. He's the kind of guy that, we should have him over the house. He's great. He's just the kind of guy you invite home to meet mom, right? So he's one of the guys that just as straight as an arrow, just a tremendous guy, great sense of humor. He's got real thick skin. He enjoys, he's just a fun-loving guy. He enjoys he doesn't mind getting busted on, and he'll bust your chops in return. He's a total friend to all the people he meets, and he couldn't be more genuine. And I made the line once that he couldn't be more grounded if he was a mud puddle. The guy's just really got his act together. He's humble, he's hungry, he's a very smart kid, really smart. I got to know him while we were shooting commercials, of course, and just by the way he handled himself with the crew, and with the things we had to get done during a shoot for a number of car commercials, his intelligence showed through, and that, so he's all of that. And I was impressed with him, and he's genuine, great, and couldn't be in a better spot. He embraces the city, loves the spot he's in. And I think that's a genuine thing as well. When he says he loves Buffalo, he's not just saying it. So a lot of things have come together, and a lot of confluence of events and personalities that have led to Bills getting, I think, the perfect guy for their city.
One of the things that I've noted on this show and in different, mediums that I've written on and appeared on video, radio over the years has been growing tired of, defending my stance on Josh Allen, especially early on in the process, because, there were a lot of things that I think a lot of folks locally, when you're covering a 6-10 football team, it's, you're not getting a lot of national eyes on the product. And so, we were up close and personal. I think a lot of people saw the potential in Josh Allen, and I was pretty high on him from the jump. But going on some of these national shows, you kind of get the eye rolls, and you kind of get some of the, what are you seeing that we're not? Because, they're seeing the low lights and all the, clips that, make their way around social media. But I guess my question is, with Josh, the way that he's handled the doubt, to me, is what's been most impressive. How do you feel like he's done that and remained, so focused on the team goal and his own development?
I think he's gotten he fell into a great coaching staff, for one thing. There's no question about it. Sean and Brian Daboll, and those guys have done a phenomenal job. Ken Dorsey, even Matt Barkley, you can go that far all the way down. He fell into or got drafted by an organization that was fully willing to give him 100% support, do everything they could to make sure he was getting better, and had everything he needed to get better. That has been as big a part of his success and his ability to kind of look past all the criticism as his hard work has been. And believe me, he's worked hard. Even after his first year, he came back and the coaches were like, wow, he was a different guy. He went from 52 to almost 60%, 59% of his passes completed. And this year, even us supporters, the staunch Josh Allen fans, we're hoping he could get to 63 or 64% completion. Well, of course, he's blown that out of the water. He's 70% completion percentage. He's thrown for 4,000 yards with 2 games to play. He's got a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. He's scored more touchdowns for the team than anybody ever in the history of the team. With one more touchdown, he breaks Jim Kelly's record for touchdown throws in a season. He's off the charts, and certainly all through the first 3 years, he has had to listen to the fact that there are a lot of people out there, a lot of national media people out there who thought he was a punchline. They thought he was a bust. They thought he was a never gonna be. And now, even from the first week, in a normal year, he would be in the conversation for the MVP of the National Football League. And he is in that conversation on the outside of it. He's the only guy that's been Offensive Player of the Week 4 times. And if there weren't guys, and you're talking about Aaron Rodgers and Pat Mahomes as the only 2 other guys that are in the conversation. And Josh has absolutely taken a crowbar and pried his way into the conversation for MVP. He won't go away. Now, certainly these last 2 games are a little bit problematic because one of them may be absolutely meaningless. Mm-hmm. But even having said all of that, the guy's for real. He has stayed with it. He has gotten better by absolutely tangible, incremental milestones throughout his career to this point. I can look back at the game that I knew the Bills had their guy was his rookie season. I believe it was the last game of the year, maybe next to the last game of the year in Miami, where he had a hand in scoring 5 touchdowns. And they would have won. They lost the game, in fact. And they would have won the game had he been able to hit Robert Clay in the end zone at the tight end, breaking into the front of the end zone. They would have won that game, and they had no business winning that game unless the guy taking snaps was Josh Allen. That's when I knew they had their guy. And he took a big step from there the next season, got them to the playoffs, and took the Texans into overtime in their first playoff game. So, yeah, if somebody's out there saying Josh Allen's not a good quarterback now, they're not watching and they're looking for clicks. He's the real thing. He's a great quarterback. He's going to be great for a long time. This team's going to be good around him. He's a real bona fide NFL starting quarterback who is verging here in his 3rd year on bursting into the conversation of the elite quarterbacks in the league.
Steve, speaking of the team, are there any glaring weaknesses on this team as the playoffs approach? Because when you look up and down the roster, it's truly hard to find one.
There's not any glaring holes in this team right now. Not right now. Their running game has come to life. They rushed for 182 last week and put the game away. You look at the team, they're playing against the number 1 defense in the National Football League 2 weeks ago, and they just decided to and ran off the last 7 minutes and 11 seconds of the entire game. They wouldn't let the Steelers have the ball back. They absolutely crushed the clock with the running game in the last game. They ran for 192 yards against the New England Patriots. Their running game has come along. Josh has thrown for 4,000 yards, and he's got a 70% completion percentage. They, if there was a hole in their game, if you were looking for the one thing that they could do better, you'd have to say, okay, maybe they take too many penalties once in a while. Other than that, they match up physically with everybody. And not only that, too, they're going to be getting healthier now with John Brown coming back on the field, maybe this week or certainly by the end of the season. They've gotten healthier. So, yeah, there is no glaring weakness in this team. This is going to be a special year for them. It's certainly they're making it into a special opportunity. And it's going to be exciting to see them finish. And I've said it for weeks now. You get the feeling, even with the Tennessee Titans in the mix, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, the way they were playing, with Indianapolis playing as well and Cleveland's playing as well they are, you really get the feeling this Bills team is on a collision course with the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship.
You know, it's funny you mentioned it's hard to find a weakness because I really don't see it. And to that point, the way that this defense has rounded into form, you know, I always tell people that ask me about how I believe that this defense is looking like the unit they were a year ago and years past. I look at the faces on the opposing team's quarterback at the end of each game, and go watch Drew Lock in the fourth quarter, Ben Roethlisberger in the fourth quarter, Nick Mullins in the fourth quarter. There's confusion, there's frustration, and that's what this defense does, particularly in the secondary. Tre'Davious White is playing at the level he was at last year, or maybe even better. And I think when you have that kind of secondary in this league, to your point, those are the teams that the Kansas Cities of the world fear a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. The Bills seem to be one of those teams that can score with Kansas City. They'll stay on the field with them, and they'll answer them touchdown for touchdown. Their red zone offense is dynamite for the Buffalo Bills. They were playing the number one red zone team in the league last week in Denver, and they lumped them up for 48 points, and they had 2 red zone touchdowns called back.
Mm-hmm.
They were scoring whenever they wanted to against the Denver Broncos, and the Broncos had their number one red zone defense in the league. This is a team that really feels they're going to score points, period. And if you want to get into a 55-54 shootout, they're all about it. They've got a playmaking defense that's there, and this defense has started to take the ball away. Up front, they're playing much better. Their pass pressure is getting better. Their secondary has been really strong throughout the year. Jordan Poyer's playing as good as any safety in the league. Tre'Davious White's playing as good as any corner in the league. Taron Johnson has improved leaps and bounds from maybe a slump in the beginning of the year, and nobody gets thrown at in the National Football League more than Levi Wallace. That guy has got to get used to it. He's used to it. I mean, he expects the ball to come to him every time, and that gives him a little bit of an advantage, lets him play better than he would have otherwise. He expects the ball coming to him because Tre'Davious White's on the other side of him. They've got a defense, and Milano getting back into the lineup really is playing extremely well too. The only question with him is, will they give him 100% of the snaps he would have gotten had he not been hurt with a pec injury? This defense is playing extremely well. Their run defense has escalated since the bye, since probably about a week before they took their bye. Their run defense has really gotten it together. They're hard to run the football on. They're a great third down defense, and they really are clicking on all cylinders. And it's interesting to say that now because you can see it, because they weren't for the entire season. It's a team that seems to be in a long 4-month crescendo, and they are peaking just when they need to peak.
Talent's one thing, but when you watch this team, there's so much camaraderie. You see the dancing on the sidelines, the celebrations, and it kind of reminds me of way back, the glory days of the Bills. You guys went from the bickering Bills to this really close unit, this almost family-like atmosphere. In your opinion, how important is camaraderie in addition to talent?
It's Marv used to say this, that the difference between the number one ranked team in the National Football League and the 32nd ranked team in the National Football League, the difference between 1 and 32, between first and last, is about 2% of the total. Every team's got some great players on it. But where those team players are, depends on how they, it depends. Each team is different. Some teams have great defensive linemen. Some have great secondaries, great wideouts, great quarterback, great running back, you name it. But they're all different, but they all have great players. He says, so they're all, very similar. And there's only about 2% of the total that you can control by what you can control. And then he made this point. He said that 2% is 100% of the difference. And part of that, a big part of that 100%, the 2%, is your culture. We saw early on in the Sean McDermott era how some guy who fans didn't really know about would make a play and the entire sideline would absolutely erupt. And that comes from knowing each other and knowing each other's backstory. I mean, you know why the guy on the other side, an offensive lineman knows why a defensive back on the defense is playing as hard as he's playing, because he's got a wife and 2 kids, or he's got a handicapped child, or he's got a child that's sick, or he's got a dad that's sick. And I know why he's playing, because of what happened in his life. These guys are very, very knowledgeable about what's going on in each other's lives away from football, how they got to the point they're at. That's a thing that Sean did, and it was really extremely important to him, and it's paid dividends. These guys are pulling for each other big time, not just for the team and the scoreboard of the game that they're actually playing in, but for their life and what it means to them to be a part of the team. That goes a long way in a game that is very physically taxing, very physically demanding, emotionally demanding, something that you have to invest so much of your heart and soul and effort and pain into. When you got guys who why they do it, it goes a long way toward elevating everybody to a higher level, and it shows.
Earlier this year, now I think it was about a month ago, found out again that you are semifinalist for the Hall of Fame. Congratulations, my friend.
Thanks.
I know that it's for Bills fans. Well, first, let me mention this. I started getting ready for the show. You start Googling and doing some research, and I came across a Facebook page that has 2,200 subscribers or people that like it, and the page sole existence is Steve Tasker. Get him into the Hall. That's the entire point of it. So I guess I
don't have anything to do with it. I didn't know. I'm not on Facebook, so that's not me. I promise.
The amount of traction on each post, and the guy that runs it, he's like, all right, there's a lot of people here. The point of the page is basically get Steve Tasker in the Hall. I don't know what else you want me to post, but we're going to keep posting to get him there. I mean, we talked about the fan base. You know the connection that you have with them. Sure. But I mean, I guess in your own words, what would it mean for a guy that, you look at your career, 7 All-Pros, 7 Pro Bowls. I mean, everything that you did for one of the greatest dynasties in football history. I mean, what would it mean for you to finally get it?
Well, I don't know. It would be, immeasurable. I mean, it's a huge thing. There's no small thing to be voted in. That's why not very many guys are. And I appreciate the attention and the conversation, but I'm pretty sure if I deserved to be in, I would probably already be there. I've been in the conversation because I had a unique career, a very unique career. It's a career I wouldn't change for anything. I loved every minute of it. It's been a gift that I've carried with me forever. But to get in, I would be in a position like so many guys all my buddies who have been in. I've heard dozens of acceptance speeches, and I would be in the same spot. I would be saying that this is just not me. There's dozens and dozens of people who have affected my life in a positive way that allowed me to be a good enough football player to be considered, let alone get inducted into this Hall of Fame. So, I mean, that's where I would be. But I would probably stand on what I just did. If I was good enough to get in, I would probably already be in. But it doesn't mean I don't appreciate the conversation. And I'm really touched by, fans who think who followed me and continue to follow me and appreciate me, and who bring up plays that they remember about my career. I mean, it's touching. There's no question about it. But I tease Bruce and Thurman and Jim and Andre and those guys. They keep telling me they're trying to get me into the Hall of Fame. I keep telling them, don't work too hard, because I got it pretty good now. Getting in the Hall of Fame may mess it all up for me, right? So I like where I'm at right now. So and we kind of have a laugh about that, but it's obviously an honor to be in the conversation. If it happens for me, nobody will be more happy than I am, believe me. But I'm too busy, and my life is too full to be wrapped up in it.
You mentioned how the fans really appreciate your career, but it's not just the fans. On Monday, the Bills will take on the Patriots, and they have a really great special teams player in Matthew Slater. And Matthew Slater has gone as far as to say, I'm not sure I would have a career in the NFL if it wasn't for a guy like Steve Tasker. So when you hear players that are in the league today, 9-time Pro Bowler in Matthew Slater, what does that mean to you?
Well, I remember, I appreciate it, and it's great to hear him say that. I've noticed him from the beginning of his career how good he has been, and I can tell you guys early in my career that I watched on other teams who were great players, guys like Bill Bates and Mossy Tutupu, who in particular. Mossy was in our division in New England, and I became acquainted with him, and God rest his soul, he was a tremendous player. So there have been guys before me who. Were the same with me as I am with Matthew Slater. It's a great generational, circle of life that goes on in the NFL where old players mentor young players and inspire young players, and those young players get old and they inspire and empower and in turn, be our mentors for younger players coming in again. So I'm glad to be a part of that, and I'm very flattered that Matthew thinks that of me. I've watched him play a ton, and he's a really good player. And perhaps it won't be me who goes in the Hall of Fame. It'll be Matthew Slater, perhaps, and I'm all for it. He's a great player.
Well, Steve, we're not going to take up much more of your time here. I wanted to give you a chance to let everybody know where to find you, and also shout out this unbelievable Bills content team that is just churning out some great stuff. Michelle Girardi Zumwalt, obviously, if you don't know her, I mean, you can find her on Twitter. She's really interactive with Bills Mafia. She continues to lead a team full of talented folks that are putting out great stuff. Just today, they put out the 12 Days of Christmas, and very entertaining. But your team, where people can find you, and just anything you want to say.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm on Twitter at Steve Tasker 89. I'm on the live on radio for 3 hours a day with a really talented guy, Chris Brown, who has been with the Bills for a decade and a half, and only just now has actually got a chance to do the radio side of it. He and I are doing the radio show, One Bills Live, noon till 3. You can listen to us on WGR Sports Radio 55, or you can get us on the radio.com app. We're on all the we're on all the time, and it's all Bills all day, all NFL for 3 hours from noon to 3 every day. That's it, and it's been a real gift to me to have a relationship with the Bills. I left CBS now 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, after a 2-decade-long career with CBS Sports, doing games from the booth. And it's great to be at home doing games, doing one team every week, a team that I love and have a relationship with. So it's been a real gift for Kim and Terry to allow me to be a part of the organization the way they have. We have a great show. We love the radio show, One Bills Live. We also do a podcast, One Bills Light, that is the best interview of the week that we do on this radio show that it comes out. You can catch that on the same platforms of Bills.com and BuffaloBills.com and all that. So, but I really would say this: the organization that I work for, the Bills, after 17 years of a playoff drought, and to have the Pagulas take over, hire Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, and to support them in the way they have, is a testament to it's a testament to their commitment and their intelligence and their grace and their ability to lead. So Terry and Kim have done a great job. Sean and Brandon have done a phenomenal job with Kim and Terry, and the organization is absolutely positively on a steep climb. They have done absolutely everything right and for the right reasons, and it's fun to be a part of. So the best part about this Bills season, and I know it's a special season for a lot of people, but I would think about it like this: it's not just a special season that's going to drop out of heaven and we can all enjoy it. It seems to be the start of an era that will do everything and rival the 90s teams of the early 90s with Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Bruce Smith, Andre Reed, Cornelius Bennett, Darryl Talley, and those guys. I think this team is on the verge of an era that Bills fans are going to be very proud of.
Well said. Steve Tasker, thank you so much. Go get back to your family and have a great week. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, guys. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
Anytime. Take care.
Ready for football? Tops is with ready-to-serve fan favorites everyone will cheer for. Delicious family or party packs like pizza, sliders, fried chicken, barbecue, or beef on whack, starting at only $4 per serving. Perfect for game day and any day. Only at Tops.
Vic Carucci, my buddy, my press room buddy. I feel like I haven't seen you in years. How are you? Oh no, we don't got your audio. We don't got your audio. Let me see here. Did I mute you? Oh no, we can't hear you. While Vic works on his audio, he is Vic Carucci from the Buffalo News. He again needs no introduction, just like our last guest, Steve Tasker. We are going to get into a lot of Bills topics, hopefully with Mr. Carucci tonight, with this Bills football team sitting at 11-3 and number one in the AFC East. Ryan, where are we sitting right now? Because we're going to talk about this Patriots game a little bit. We're going to talk about potential for some shows coming up here in the next couple days. But on a Wednesday ahead of a Patriots game that is kind of different, it's kind of weird. What do you think?
I think you said it. I think weird is the word. It's just been a complete 180 from where we've been in years past. We were just talking before the show. ESPN puts out those video packages for every game, and Bills versus Patriots Monday night. Other than saying the name Patriots, that's like the only mention for that team. It's all Bills highlights. It's all Bills clips. And when you look at the seasons, it makes sense. The Bills are 11-3. They're the number 2 seed in the AFC. Whereas you have the Patriots, who have been eliminated from the playoffs, which, first time I believe since 2008 is what they said last week. So it's just been a changing of the guard. It's been, a little surreal to see how things are. But, Buffalo, as of right now, still has plenty to play for. They can lock up this number 2 seed and possibly not only host one playoff game come January, but 2 if all things go right. So that is huge for the Bills here with 2 weeks left to play.
Yeah, we put out a story yesterday on the scenario this weekend there where the Bills can wrap up the number 2 seed, and it consists of 3 things. The Tennessee Titans have to lose, playing the Green Bay Packers. The Pittsburgh Steelers have to lose. They're playing the Indianapolis Colts. And the Bills have to beat the 6-8 New England Patriots. And voila, you have 2 home playoff games for the Buffalo Bills and a chance to rest your starters against Miami in a very interesting scenario where, the Baltimore Ravens play 2 kind of, easy games here down the stretch. The Giants and the Bengals. I don't think that, that's striking fear into anybody in Baltimore right now. And if they win those 2 games, and Miami, there's a couple scenarios. If you play with the what's it called? The ESPN playoff. Yes, go play that, because there's a couple scenarios that I think people will you'll see. The Cleveland Browns, if they lose 1 of 2, there's a scenario the Ravens get in, and then also if Miami doesn't win out. We're going to try to get Vic back in here, and let me see if I can do if I can do 2 things at once, which sometimes is a struggle. Are we back? Oh no, I can't hear you. There's like a little 3 dots in the bottom right hand corner. See if you can add some type of audio. We're gonna get it. But what are your thoughts, Ryan? Do you think that they do wrap this up on this weekend, or what do you think?
I think it's one of those scenarios where everything, I don't want to say favors the Bills because any given Sunday, but they're all realistic possibilities in terms of the outcomes of those games. And perhaps what I like most about it is you mentioned the ESPN playoff simulator. How nice is it for Bills fans not to be clicking on games to figure out scenarios to get into the playoffs? You're already in. You're locked in to the playoffs, and now you could possibly be that number 2 seed. So again, just like I was saying, a little bit surreal that we're sitting here 2 weeks left to play, and we already know they're in. But now it's just kind of playing around with it to see how do they lock down that number 2 seed.
Yeah, a couple updates from practice today. John Brown is practicing. He looked good out there. He was running routes. We didn't really see a lot of teamwork. So I don't know how much he's actually getting involved in that part of things. Do I hear you, Vic? No, nothing. All right. But really, Ryan, it continues to be one of the main storylines here is health. I mean, the Bills are the healthiest they've been all year. They're going into a stretch where there's a potential for an off week 17, to prepare for the playoffs, and they just keep getting healthier and healthier. I mean, obviously, look at the injury report. Stefan Tre'Davious, Stephon Diggs, Tre'Davious White appear this week. They practiced today. Darrell Williams and Andre Roberts didn't practice, but the totality of it all, it seems like they're
test.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, I changed. So this is not meant to be a lame excuse. Earlier today, I had to do a similar software or whatever to you guys with Channel 2, and they have a whole different setting. And one of their technical guys said, anytime you use this setting, you got to clear the cache or whatever, because it'll stay in there and remember that. So I think that's what I had to do. I am not totally unsavvy with technology, but obviously I need more learning.
Listen, my friend, we've been doing this show for almost 10 months now. And if I could tell you all the technical issues we've had ourselves, I mean, we could fill a book. We're glad that we have you, audio and everything else. Like I said, I miss you, man. How are you?
I'm first of all, yes, let's start there. Miss you too. Obviously, Ryan, I would see this is the whole thing. And it's true with all walks of life, but our group, I mean, covering the team, one of the best parts of doing this job, and I've done it now for 42 seasons, is the camaraderie from the Larry Felzers and Milt Northrups many, many years ago, John Murphy when he was at WBEN, Van Miller, all of those, Rick Azar. I'm throwing all these old man names out there that I'm not sure how many of the audience knows or remembers, but to you and I generally sat next to each other, and it wasn't just, we talked football, but I think the fun of what we did was the kibitzing and all that other stuff, and me saying, recommending restaurants that you would say, you'd get all fired up and say, yeah, I want to take my family and go there, and then never go. And that was our little inside thing.
Do you know the universe has
and now you can't
now, because now I can't go. Cody said you didn't listen to Vic for 2.5 years, and now you're screwed.
And now you're screwed. And I also find out, of course, and this is where the aging of my aging comes into play, is when I find out that I think it was your wife went to high school with my older daughter at Will North. So, but wonderful. You help keep me young, as do the others on the beat, who mostly many of them, some of them younger than my own kids. But it's great. This is it's been a heck of an adjustment. Covering a team from a distance, and that's what we're all doing, right? And this type of setup is really our daily thing. And I feel as if you can do the job, and I think you can do it more than a decent job, but I don't feel I know this team as well as I would know it being around it. I'd be lying if I say, oh, you have a great feel for who these guys are. I've never had a face-to-face conversation with Stephon Diggs or Zach Moss or some of the, Gabe Davis. Talked with them a whole lot this way, but that's not the same as interacting.
To your point, and Ryan, I want you to get to the next thing, but I want to bring this up because it's interesting. I think all of us, the beat guys that have been in the room and get a chance to kind of be around the team in different environments. Training camp offers a really natural, really laid back way to get to know them. I noticed a few kind of snafus in the Zoom environment early on. I know I had a weird exchange with Josh Norman early on. I think you had one with Stephon Diggs. Mm-hmm. New guys in the situation where it's like, I think those would not have happened in a normal year when you get a chance to get in front of somebody and have a conversation with them. It's just this weird divide that I feel like it makes the relationships different, to your point.
Yeah, well, relationships are based on trust, and it's harder to develop any level of that trust. I mean, there's always the foundation of you're on this side of it doing your journalistic thing, and they're on that side. They're players, they're coaches. And it's not meant to be while it can be, I think, and hopefully a friendly working environment, it is a working environment, and the pros understand you have a job to do. But I think that generally players will enter it with until you prove trustworthy, I'm not going to trust you because you're the media. You can burn me quickly. It happens. It happens in all forms, not just the NFL or sports. So getting to know you and sometimes conversations that, and this is what I miss greatly is, and miss them even more, even before COVID, is in an era when there's so much appointment conversation in the locker room. You can only get a certain amount of time. When I covered Steve Tasker, for instance, and Kelly and those Bills teams, and even before that, going back to the early 80s, they were, you could hang out. There was no limit. You spent time. You were free to roam basically the building. You walked in and out of coaches' offices. It was, the environment was so different, and I'm not doing in the good old days thing. I'm just telling you the realities of what was and what is. But now with this additional layer of distance between us and them and who we cover, you struggle to get that trust. And just what you're saying, Stefon Diggs, I remember that interview where the question had to be asked. It was his first chance first opportunity talking with the media. And this guy got his way out of Minnesota. There's no question about it. Brandon Beane said, for the record, he saw an opening because of his tweets and such to pursue the trade. And when asked about that, you knew it would be a sensitive thing. It could hit a nerve, but he answered it however he answered it. I still think that he's come to warm up to this team in ways that he didn't have in Minnesota by far.
You mentioned you've covered the NFL for over 40 years now, and you mentioned Steve Tasker as one of those players that you covered extensively. Once again, named a semifinalist for the Hall of Fame. In your opinion, what makes him so deserving to get into Canton?
Yeah, well, I'm a Hall voter, and I'll tell you, I am. Part of me is anxious. It's anxiety and half dread about what's coming up, and that would be January 6th. That's the day that the Hall is going to announce the finalists. So Steve and Cornelius Bennett are on that semifinalist list, and that's the mountain, whatever you want to climb, is to get. I want to see both of them in that role. And previously, when Steve has been at this point, I felt great, but I also felt like, okay, more push is needed to get him there, as much as I can do that. And you just feel a great duty and responsibility to try to make that happen for him because of what it means. He's deserving, to answer specifically what you asked me, Ryan, because he single-handedly defined the role of gunner, of cover guy, and played it in ways that changed games. That he was a true, if the definition of a Hall of Famer is great enough at his position to be a game-changing factor, and someone the other team has to respect and handle and game plan for. Steve Tasker's that guy in every possible way. And it's not just hearing from the people you would expect to support him, Marv Levy and Jim Kelly and Steve Thurman, Andre. It's hearing from from opposing coaches. Don Shula wrote a tremendous tribute that I kept and, of course, have shared with the other voters in talking about how the Dolphins, how he drove them crazy. Most recently, and I'm not speaking out of school here because there are certain things we don't share in terms of the process, but Mike Westhoff, that name, one of the all-time great special teams coaches in the league. And he's retired now. And I reached out to him. I said, Mike, would you be okay with doing a letter of endorsement for Steve Tasker, in this, now that he's reached the semifinal round? And it was amazing what he wrote. It blew me away. Hopefully it will blow away the other voters. And Cornelius Bennett, same thing, endorsements and such out there as well, very deserving of this honor. And hopefully it's going to happen. You brought that up, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep tonight because I'm going to be thinking about this again. And January 6th is pounding in my head because that's the key date.
Now, do you present every year? Like how does it take people in it? Because I cover the NFL. I'm not really super familiar with the process of it.
Sure. So how it works is each NFL city has a representative. Before me, it was Mark Gaughan, who is one of the all-time greats of our business, and I'm just blessed to work with him, and Jay Skursky and Jason Wolf. I'm not leaving anybody out. But the voters, and then before Mark, it was Larry Felser. So Mark handed me the baton, and when I returned to the news, I'd been with the Cleveland Browns for a bunch of years, and then came back to the news. And what it involves is you have they call them you vote down, you bring down their cuts at each level. So it starts in the hundreds, and then it gets down to a final 15. So we're at 25, trying to get to 15 right now. It's all done electronically. The actual voting will happen virtually. Normally, we are in a room the morning before the Super Bowl. At early morning, it's crack of dawn. Meeting starts at 7 on time, 7 a.m. whatever time zone you're in, and usually in a big banquet room at a hotel in the Super Bowl footprint. But again, it's different this year, like everything else. But what you do at this stage is you are communicating with all the other voters. The deadline's over as far as the time you had to cast your vote, again, electronically, to get your vote to 15. Okay. And you submit that. We all submitted those. Before those are cast, you can lobby for anyone. And by the way, you don't have to necessarily be in the city of that player to do lobbying. Lobbying can be done on behalf. It's even stronger when it comes from other voters. And yes, we all talk with each other. We encourage others to, we make our case to them, the other voters, and hope they hear us and agree and get aboard. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll tell you flat out, no way you're going to convince me that player X is in. I just don't see it. The challenge with Steve is obvious. And I think I heard you guys ask him, and I don't agree that he says if I was deserving, I'd already be in. It's a nice thing for him to say, but I wholeheartedly disagree. He is deserving as anybody, but he's humble. But the point is, he plays special teams. And what happens with vote, there's a prejudice. It's a built-in prejudice. That's why there are only a couple of kickers in there, right? Jan Stenerud and Anderson. Why you've seen Morton Anderson, and why you've only seen Ray Guy as a punter. Cover people are not position guys. And a hall voter will ask, if I put in cover guy Tasker, what position guy am I taking? What linebacker am I going to leave off my ballot? What receiver? What, and so forth. What quarterback? It tends to be that decision, that tough decision that will be made. But I hope that challenge happens when he's on that list of 15, because that means he's in the discussion. That means that vote, that next vote to get in the hall follows that.
This is the 8th time for him, right?
As a semifinalist. We haven't gotten him. So the other term you'll be familiar, make you familiar. We call it get him in the room. In the room, which again will be virtual this year, but in the room means his name is part of the presentation that happens at that, again, traditionally has been the day before the Super Bowl.
So have you gotten 7 phone calls saying like, Vic, come on, man. What are you saying about me here? Can you push a little bit harder?
I'm glad you say that. You mentioned that, because let's just talk Steve and there have been other guys, and Mark, I compared notes with Mark because he's been the most recent, and Mark has been as good at this as anybody. And by the way, I consult him in this whole process, because he was, of course, the guy trying to push Steve over that goal line too, and others, and he's been successful with others. You hear from fans, of course, social media galore, the occasional texts, a lot of emails, who are supportive of him, and I listen and I take it all in. They're preaching to the choir. I'm not in disagreement. I know, and I love that some of them think I wield more power than I think I actually do, because I'm it's one of 48 voters, and that's the reality, right? So it is a true democratic process, small d, democratic process, but that's what it is.
I just saw a shot to take a shot, so I took a shot because I miss you, and I usually would just reach over the aisle and give you a little elbow, but that's the best I can do.
Yeah, and you were, and that's the other thing you were doing. You were kind of infringing on my space, and now I'm not used to having to do this all the time because you take up a room.
Vic, Bills are 11-3, currently the number 2 seed in the AFC. What is the best scenario for them on Wild Card Weekend in terms of who they could match up and play, in your opinion? And are they on a collision course with the Kansas City Chiefs, in your opinion?
So the first question, we did for the Buffalo News, sort of like a panel discussion thing with Mark Gaughan, with Jason and Jay Skursky and myself. We wrote I think it was like 3 paragraphs we were asked to do for the Buffalo News and offered up. I was a little surprised that one of us just didn't deviate and say something other than what apparently was obvious, Miami. Because I do think the Dolphins would be the best matchup. I don't think I say that also adding, there is no team that is too much of a challenge for the Bills, in my view. The path is clear in my view, to Kansas City, where that's where the road to the AFC road goes through, I think, to get to Tampa. And the thing with Miami is you've got a rookie quarterback, and we've seen this before in the postseason. Rookie quarterbacks look more like rookies than ever. And I give Tua Tagovailoa a lot of credit for what he's done. And I think he's going to be a really good quarterback. I don't know if he'll be great. It's way too early for that. But I see a guy who still has learning to do on the job, as all rookies should and do. He has some dangerous qualities that I still think the defense can handle. And I think there's a Brian Daboll factor here. Brian Daboll knows this kid inside out, can be very helpful in the preparation with Leslie Frazier and with Sean McDermott. And there's still a newness for the Bills to some degree, playoff pressure, but I think it's going to be would be a lot greater for Miami. And yes, Kansas City, it's Kansas City and Buffalo on the collision course, in my view. And I see no reason why they can't. I think they're the better team. I think Buffalo's the better team. I know they lost that head-to-head. I think there were a lot of promising elements to that game for Buffalo, the way they handled that defense generally. And yes, Mahomes and all that in company, Kelsey, they're beasts. But I think the Bills have enough answers. I really do.
I tend to agree with you. But you mentioned Brian Daboll there, and I want to get into him a little bit. Sure. We heard from plenty of folks today, jokingly, Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs today refusing to pitch their offensive coordinator to potential head coach hirers. They did not want to sing his praises too much. Stephon Diggs got a little bit more into what he's meant to him, but Cole Beasley, and I think going back to last year, you could see the relationship between Beasley and Daboll and how that grew, and Cole Beasley setting a career high in touchdowns and the opportunities in this offense. Of course, he wants him to stay, but the likelihood is that he, as well as Leslie Frazier, I mean, they're going to be 2 hot names, on the head coaching market. I guess to start off with, where do you think his fit is, and where are you at? Because I have some thoughts on this in terms of if he's going to leave.
Well, I think he's gone. I think it's fait accompli. He is going to be a head coach. I think there is a market for him, that just as there generally is for offensive-oriented coaches. And the success that he has had with this team, it isn't just this year. It has been in the making. You track his career, you track his momentum toward a head coaching job from Josh's rookie year. And he is guiding an offense that has 1 first rounder. And you know who that is, Josh Allen. And that has, that is screaming off of his resume. Team owners want offensive-minded guys, want quarterback fixers, want miracle people who have a magic touch. who can do all, who they believe can do all the things that usually is unrealistic to expect, but that's how they think. And they'll spend the money for coaches. They'll pay other coaches that they've hired and fired to not work for them because they can do it. There's no salary cap on that. And this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the most money that is, I mean, obviously most money is spent on players, but players are covered by TV contracts, basically that salary portion, and have a cap. Coaching is, there's no limit, and he will be the hot candidate. He has got one of the very best agents in the business in Bob Lamont, Sean McDermott's agent, Leslie Frazier's agent, right down the line. He's got also Joe Shane on that staff, and he is just killer when it comes to marrying these assistant coaches with jobs. Sean McVay in LA. I mean, Bob and his crew are very, very, very good at that. I know him really well. And Brian is ready. Brian has been coaching for this moment, and it's going to happen for him.
So let me just get to this, Ryan, because and if you want to react to this and take it from here, that'd be great too. And I want Vic's thoughts. A couple of things keep popping up to me, when I'm thinking about, the opportunities. And you mentioned that he is the guy. I mean, I'm wondering if Eric Bieniemy isn't kind of ahead of him. And so if he ends up having to kind of take that second job, or however it ends up turning out, you go back to his past and you look at the experience that he had in New England and the rough road that there was for Josh McDaniels when he went out and tried to be a head coach, so much so it went so poorly that he's kind of spurned a couple opportunities since then, Indianapolis and I think there was another one in there, that I wonder if that gives him any pause because of how good the situation is here. The fact that, there are a couple, the Chargers job to me as an offensive guy, that's the one I would want if I was Brian Daboll. You still don't know what's going to happen with the Jets. The entire culture there is a little bit alarming to me. I'm just wondering if all of these little pieces couldn't keep him here if A, the Bills paid him more money, and B, just the comfort level that he has, not only with the offense, but within the staff and within the organization and being from Buffalo and the community. Right.
Yeah. Matt, everything you say and laid out, is sound. There's nothing unsound about what you say, but the realities are this: he wants to be a head coach, and nothing compares to that. A pay raise or whatever, paying him like a head coach, and that's not going to happen. There is a structure. Sean McDermott's at one of the highest paid levels of coaches in this league with this extension that he got back before the season. Brian Daboll, as a head coach, may not necessarily see that with contract one as a head coach, but the distance between where he is now and where that is, he's going to come darn close. And there's that. It's not just the money. It's the idea of climbing that Mount Rushmore as a coach. You aspire to be that. He's worked his entire life. He came out of St. Francis, dreaming of the opportunity that is before him. And had he been able to been hired by the Browns before they went with Kevin Stefanski last year, and they interviewed him last year, and I'm told he did an incredible job. I know I worked for the organization, Jimmy Haslam, Dee Haslam. They loved what Brian did, but they were kind of fixated on Stefanski, and they just thought at that point Stefanski had the edge, and they made a heck of a hire. But as far as the situation here, it is great for him. He's part of why it's been great. And I'm sure, knowing Brian and the confidence, and you've been around, there's a confidence level that Brian has that he's going to do the same thing for another team, another offense, and, culture, all those things. He comes in and builds that. Don't forget about Houston and Deshaun Watson. Don't forget about some teams that have some really good QB situations that are going to look for head coaches, and it could be upwards of 8 opportunities. Eric Bieniemy, you mentioned, will be, I think, and should be a viable candidate for one of these openings as well. But I think Brian's going to have his pick as well. I can't really put a number to it, but one of them is going to be the right one for him as he goes through the interview process. And I know this, Bills fans don't want to hear it. They want to say, no, we got to hang on to him. And the players know the reality too, just as they can leave and have left in free agency. And, Stephon Diggs is on his second team. He knows that they know. They said, Cole Beasley said it to me too. He said, I told Brian, you can't go anywhere. You got to stay here. They love him and they love what he's done for their careers. What do players want, guys? What do they want from the coach? Put them in the best position to succeed. He does that.
And you kind of mentioned it's hard to kind of rank the jobs, but is there a one team maybe in your mind that does make the most sense in terms of a fit? Matt mentioned the Chargers, Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler. You have some talent there. Houston, Deshaun Watson. I'm going to throw out another team that hasn't fired their head coach yet, but I think would be a great fit. Jacksonville Jaguars, young running back, DJ Chark. And right now, they're the front runners for Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. So, it might come down to how he feels about a specific quarterback, but in your mind, is there one fit that's better than the rest?
Ryan, I don't think so necessarily. I hear like we can handicap it because it's what we do. We're gonna break it all down. He will to some extent, but ultimately there's more to it than just the feel of what the situation is, quote, on paper. Let's think back to Sean McDermott. What was the situation he inherited from Rex Ryan? Quarterback wise, there was nothing. I mean, not to say not to suggest that with Tyrod Taylor, they had nothing, but they didn't have a franchise guy. Even Rex would tell, that he would say that. And Anthony Lynn, even though he had him with the Chargers, it wasn't an ideal situation. He was a placeholder for the next guy. They knew they were going to get a next guy. He also knew he had a lot of building to do. And look at what he's done. Brian Daboll is his second offensive coordinator, right? So you have to get the job first, assess the situation. And frankly, would you guys agree, Sean and Brandon Beane have reinvented what One Bills Drive is culturally. There was rampant dysfunction in that entire building. It got cleansed by them. I think they've got it to a point like I've not seen it in the longest time. I mean, they really they've been so important just beyond what you see on the field to getting it to a place where their impact could be made on the field. And so I think Brian has that in his mind too. And frankly, I know this from I've had a lot of conversations with Bob Lamont. What his clients do is they don't just come in with a book of, this is all my brilliant X's and O's I'm going to show you. This is how we're going to have a quarterback throw for 4,000 yards and 30, 40 touchdowns. It's a top to bottom structural situation. And the other vital point to this is what? General manager. So find the right person. And we've heard this story. We've heard them retell the story. I don't think McDermott and Beane were necessarily joined at the hip as much as people thought coming in, meaning that, yes, they knew each other, they were friends, they hung out and all this, but there was a notion that Sean got in, my buddy Brandon's going to come with me. Brandon Beane independently convinced the Pagulas that he was right for his role. And then through the course of the job, he and Sean had to learn about each other as head coach and GM. That was part. You want to talk about process? That was a big part of the process.
Something happened. Thank you for joining the Shout Football Podcast. Everybody that's watching across Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Special guest tonight, Vic Carucci from the Buffalo News. I didn't even get a chance to give him a proper intro. You can find him, the Buffalo News, the BN Blitz. He does Sirius satellite radio every Saturday. We actually got lucky tonight, and he didn't have to fill in over there, so we got you on the show here tonight. But you do cover the NFL. You cover the Bills, obviously, on the beat, but you also cover the league, and you've done so for a long time. There's one thing that happened this week that I want to get your take on, and it's something that from the moment I first saw it, the video was posted right before the Pittsburgh game, JuJu Smith-Schuster dancing on the logo. I just thought, like any self-aware person that has either been around the NFL, watched sports, knows that specific behavior is going to get you in some type of trouble. I mean, you're asking for it. And when I saw the video after the game of the Bills taking, issue with it and Josh Allen saying, let them dance, we're going to go out and work. And just the way that the storyline is played out, and almost like, the nose up at it from JuJu Smith-Schuster and even some other people that have come out to support him. And obviously now Mike Tomlin has put his foot down, it seems, and he's not going to do the dance anymore. But it just seems like they got rid of Antonio Brown, who was this big distraction, and the issues with Ben Roethlisberger, and JuJu Smith-Schuster was kind of built or framed as this next number one. Without Antonio Brown, I don't even think he's been the number one receiver, type of production that would warrant this kind of distraction.
Right. I think he's making it pretty easy for the Steelers to ultimately part ways if there's a continued if the production doesn't go in the right direction. And look, they've been on a steady slide, and it's not just Ben. A lot of people are culpable from that standpoint. Yes, some key defensive injuries have contributed, but they don't look right. They don't look like a team that should have 11 wins at all. And I felt that going before. So you mentioned Sirius XM NFL Radio. My co-host, so I do a regular Saturday show there, and Dan Leverfeld, my co-host, we do our game breakdowns and picks. We were talking about the Steelers before they played Washington, and I had, after I saw that Baltimore a Wednesday afternoon game, and I said, okay, maybe it's because it's Wednesday afternoon. I'm making excuses for them, and then I realized, what am I doing? Maybe they're just not as good as you think they are. And I started to go back and look at some of their games before this Washington game. Then we got in the air. I said, I can see this team losing a couple in a row and maybe more just because they don't look right. And I'm not Nostradamus. It's just when you have a bad feeling about a team and then you see what they did against Washington or didn't do. And then, of course, you see the Bills game. And I give Bills full marks, full credit for that win. I'm not taking a thing away. But they were beating the team that a lot of us thought was a lot better going into that game. And then that Cincinnati, they looked disinterested. And Ben Roethlisberger looks like a guy who had a surgically rebuilt throwing elbow. And maybe you only get so many throws out of a rebuilt elbow.
In your opinion, what's the Bills' floor in terms of floor and ceiling?
Floor I'm sorry, Ryan.
We had a question in the comments, and I kind of just threw it to ask.
Okay. That's okay. I'll interpret it this way. Their floor is getting to the AFC championship game. This is how I'll answer that. I think this is what the questioner wanted. But I believe the ceiling is high. They can win a Super Bowl, not just get to a Super Bowl, in my opinion. I look at the NFC, there's nothing that is so daunting to me that they can't handle. Now, when I say this, I'm not just saying it that there's crappy teams everywhere so they could win. That's not what I mean at all. I mean at their level of how they are playing. I see, and I'm trying to draw on, and I loved listening to a good portion of your interview with Steve, those obvious comparisons, because I covered all those Super Bowl teams. There is a lot in common here. There is a lot of that had the no huddle, K-gun dominant offense, right? That was just, it looked unstoppable in almost every game. Jim Kelly and the boys, and the defense played well enough. It wasn't great, but it was, again, like this one, good enough, opportunistic when it had to be. Nate Odoms and company. Bruce and Cornelius and Daryl, but maybe the major common denominator is coaching, is Marv Levy and Sean McDermott. I think Sean is a latter-day Marv in so many ways, and he's the biggest thing Marv was able to do. He did it a little differently. He did it with quoting Winston Churchill, and he did it with Walt Whitman poems. And then he'd have to stop, and when he had all these blank looks on his face in the meeting room, he'd tell Thurman, look it up, Thurman, and look it up for everybody else. When they wouldn't understand what the heck he was talking about, but what they did understand was he connected with them, and there was in this love and family thing we all hear in this current Bills team. that was there. It grew. Bickering Bills thing, and it was a phrase I coined when I wrote it, and Thurman called me out for it, and in public, I mean, did it? It was like on ESPN or somewhere. And my
going at it with players for decades.
My daughter, well, no, not often, but my daughter, who's now she's mid-30s. She was a little girl at the time. She's watching with my wife, and she's hearing, is that man going to hurt Daddy? Like, he was, but Thurman, and I embraced Thurman. I mean, Thurman, through the years, that's what happens. Bill Polian, became, I mean, he was a guy that, would scream at me in his office over some story I broke that he didn't want out there. And, the gum would spit out, fly out of his mouth and all this, but he's an emotional guy. It's an emotional game, different times. And everybody's too sophisticated now. It's too calm and too easygoing. But to the point of comparing these teams, Sean has got them dialed to his thing, and he's so good. I mean, he's just such I think a good leader of men. Is he a defensive genius mastermind? He's good at that, and they had a really good defense last year. But what would you guys look at him when you list the qualities of Sean McDermott? Is great defensive mind, like super genius defensive guy. Is that number one, or is it leader of men? And I think it's leader of men.
Two things really jump out that convince me of Sean McDermott's sustainability as a great coach and a great leader, to your point. Number one, something he said about Stephon Diggs. And in the last month or so, we've seen, the story of Stephon Diggs get told in a much more broad way. I mean, he really opened up in that ESPN interview. He's been opening up with us on the Zoom calls, I feel like, the last couple months. And, he was looking for something where he can trust and kind of have it be a reciprocal thing with the coaches wherever he was going to end up playing. And I asked Sean about that. I'm like, how did that process take place? And he said, well, I feel like we have genuine people and we allow people to be who they are. And I think that is so huge, especially in this day and age where you're dealing with, people that have all these different interests and all these different things available to them. Obviously a little bit less in COVID times. And then there's also this piece where he's evolved and learned in his role. I think a lot of times there's this expectations for coaches who come into their jobs to be great head coaches the second they start. And right. I think that it takes time when it's your first gig. And Sean's been upfront about that. He's had to learn how to do it. And his game management in year 4 compared to year 1, I think has to be one of the biggest causes for hope going forward.
I think you're right, Matt. There's been a lot of he talks about this growth mindset and development. Those aren't just words to him; they mean something. And in many ways, he is talking about himself. So game management would be one thing, but I will tell you this: the impatience in this league with team owners is extreme. It is expected that you're going to hit the ground running, at least build credible in the first year because of all this astronomical multi-million-dollar contract money that is being doled out to coaches and the staffs and the coordinators. So there has to be something that represents hope and promise right away. Hey, he was not. You think he was sleeping real comfortably during a 6-10 follow-up to a playoff year that we all know shouldn't have really happened. They couldn't have backed in anymore. It was a fluke. It was off schedule. It was supposed to be a gradual climb. And last year was closer to what it should have been in year 3. What we're seeing now is more evolution, and that follows the track, obviously, of Josh Allen's development. But to your point, you mentioned about Diggs. Diggs is buying in and his performance. Okay, let's state the obvious. He's getting the ball thrown to him. Gets it thrown to him a lot. That makes him happy. Receivers are happy when the ball's thrown to them. They're less happy when it's not. And let's just get bottom line there. And that's where it starts. But I genuinely think, as he has said, he's got that camaraderie, that attachment to Josh, to the other offensive players. He wants to be a positive force in the receiver room. Chad Hall, the receiver coach, definitely connected with him and feels he's the best guy who's guided him. And like you, I've talked to people in his past, other coaches at the college level from Minnesota. They say nothing but great things as far as the team guy that he is. But ultimately, what led him to Buffalo, was wanting opportunity and not believing, whether he thought it was going to a run-dominated thing or whatever, not believing it was going to be what he has now. So Sean, but that's allowed Sean to, because he trusts who's calling the shots and putting him in position to succeed.
We could do this all night, my friend. I really do miss you. I miss this the everyday routine of it, and you just see so many different faces. And especially for me, I work for the Syracuse Post-Standard, as does Ryan, obviously. And we're not in Syracuse, so we don't have that. So we really become like coworkers. And to your earlier point, camaraderie. It's certainly missed. But before I let you get out of here, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you, where they can find your work, what you got going on, and anything you want to shout out.
Sure. So Buffalo News, and hopefully, in addition to reading your fine coverage as well, ours is subscriber based, and so you could subscribe to Buffalo News, and I think they've got always have all kinds of deals going on, and you can be in Blitz, get the app on your phone, all that. You can see the work, and again, it's a great team. I can't say it enough. Jay Skursky, Mark Gaughan, Jason Wolf. Jason Wolf just won a national writing award for a great piece on Ty and Secchi. And Josh Barnett, our executive sports editor, just kicks butt in terms of putting it all together. And the support, Mike Conley, our executive editor, you can't do this unless people are giving you, as you guys know, resources, right? What you're doing now and all the work you guys do. And I'm not blowing smoke. You work your butts off, both of you. You're active out there. You do a lot more on social media than I do, but I like I know I put a lot of likes on your takes because you're dialed in and you do it beautifully, and I love to see that. Sirius XM NFL Radio every Saturday in season from 11 a.m. usually Eastern time till 2, and then off season it's 10 a.m. till 2. We add an extra hour. But it's all year round, and I've been doing that. This is going on 16 or 17 season. I started it in 2004 when the channel signed on, and that's been a blast because you talk about the whole league, and you get callers from everywhere who know their teams inside out. So it's you're talking ball for 3 or 4 hours, and so that's the fun stuff, man. We are blessed to do what we do, and also Channel 2. Adam Benini and company, I regularly do stuff with them.
Well, we are making it through the Buffalo News roster. Vic Carucci, Mark Gaughan, Jay Skursky, all have been guests on the show. We're going to get Jason Wolf on here eventually. Maybe we'll look for the off season and get some of his, because he tells those really good feature stories. To your point, get some time to really dive into a lot of that work. But a great team over there, and I think that there's this common misconception that traditionally, like, competitors probably wouldn't do all the collaborating that you see in the world today, but I just think that this is such a rabid fan base, and there's so many talented people that cover this team. Get it from all angles, because most fan bases, it's just not like this.
No, that's very true. That you're right. You're right too. And I hate to do that when I was a young guy, but back in the day, I mean, you didn't have the platforms, obviously, and it was the whole thought I had from through college to starting the job to actually getting a job was this would be a print thing only. I didn't even radio, TV, anything like that. You didn't consider that, and there were pioneers of the late Will McDonough being one from the Boston Globe and others who did this crossover thing. Adam Schefter, for years, I just knew as a guy who covered the Denver Broncos, and we were great friends on the beat. And then we were working together at NFL.com, many years ago. So you see the change in the crossover, but the melding of this, like you say, doing it together, it's very simple. If you like the people you're around, and I do like you guys, you do this stuff. It's kind of easy. Maybe some shows you won't do, or some appearances you won't make just because you don't have the same relationships. But the relationships matter, and there are a lot. I am happy to say the Bills beat is loaded with some real fun, good-hearted, and good-natured people who I think, generally speaking, not only get along, but actually like to see others succeed. And this is the age thing. I like to see, there was a time when I was young enough in this business where I go to a Larry Felser or a Will McDonough in Boston, and just I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm lost, and I'm trying to find my way in this business, and they give you advice, or they just give you confidence, a little encouragement. That's all it takes sometimes, just a little encouragement, and there's nothing wrong with that, man. How many years have you been doing this, Matt?
About 10 maybe now.
Okay, so 32 years from now, when I'm probably not here, but 32 years from now, I want you to tell me you still love doing this, or talk to me. Look up at, well, hopefully you look it up at the sky when you see it.
That's awesome.
Sound good? Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan. I was going to let Ryan come in here with a final thought, but he's kind of...
Ryan, give me a final thought.
Yeah, final thought. Bills Mafia, this has been a special season. You've been doing your part as well. Season of giving. You've donated to several great causes this year. Big shout out to our friend Del Reed over at 26 Shirts, who just surpassed $1 million in sales. Kudos to him and all the good that he does. But, just a quick shout out to the Bills Mafia for all that they've done. Not just this year, but over the years in this time of need for a lot of people. They always go above and beyond. So just wanted to give them a shout out and a wish of happy holidays to all of them.
Awesome stuff.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy everything to every. Today was Festivus?
Festivus, yes.
Festivus, the rest of us? Yeah. Okay. Got that too.
Oh, you got it, Vic. Well, thank you so much, my friend, for taking some time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. And one of these days, we may actually bump elbows again in the media room, dude.
It'll be a welcome sight for sore eyes. It's been a long COVID season. I've appreciated the time with family, as I know you have as well, and Ryan.
Yeah,
it'll be nice to get back to some normalcy. For Ryan Talbot, Vic Carucci, I am Matt Perino. As always, the spiel. Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Apple. Subscribe, rate, and review. We really appreciate it. The Shout Buffalo Football Podcast next week. Speaking of award winners, we're going to have Toronto's John Crick. He's going to be on the show. We're going to talk a lot of different NFL storylines. Obviously, some Bills. We'll probably have another guest in there as well, but we will be back then. We will also have a couple shows, I believe, this weekend. I'm going to Boston. I think it's a 24-hour trip. I'm going to drive. I'm going to go to the game. I'm going to come back. So there'll be some ideas. There might be a pregame show. Stick with me. We're going to have some fun this weekend, hopefully. Masked up. I'm going to have a shield. I'm going to have a mask. It's going to be a crazy thing. But we got to get ready, Vic, because playoffs here. Even with two home games, there's a potential for Kansas City trip. So I kind of want to run through the motion here. But we'll be back with you with tons of content over the next couple of weeks. Vic Carucci, Ryan Talbot. I'm Matt Perino. Have a great night.
Ready for football? With every game a home game, Tops is ready for you with its TV a Day giveaway. For 6 weeks, every day you shop is a new chance to win a massive 70-inch 4K TV. Shop Tops for the best deals in town, in store.